Hey everyone, DB Paul on ambientvibes.com. Generating chords on your Eurorack when you're trying to do an ambient piece or an ambient set has always been kind of a challenge in the past. Chords in the past required multiple oscillators, similar oscillators, each tuned to a different note of the chord and then mixed together to come up with a chord. Well, nowadays it's getting much easier because there are many modules out there, such as SWN, such as the even Braids, Chord, that all make it a lot easier to come up with chords directly out of the module. So there's a lot of options available to you if you want to create ambient using chords. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see here, I have each channel has a different module that I have in my rack. And I'm going to generate chords with each and let you have a listen to what they sound like. What I'm going to do is, each one of these tracks is a module. I'm going to turn up the dry on each module first, and then I'm going to turn up the wet. This is a pre-fader sound on the reverb, and the reverb is being provided by the very lovely FX8 in the cloud mode. Okay, so here I have 8 modules, and fortunately each of these modules starts with a different letter of the alphabet. Lucky me, that means I can just use one letter for each one. So first one is T for telHarmonic, B for Braids, M for Magneto, which I'll explain in a second since it's not really a VCO, so to speak. E for the wonderful Ensemble for Ormus. The P is Plaits, Mutable instruments. The R is, what in the hell is R? Let me see if I can find R. R, rings. Yes, rings will do chord. S is SWN from 4MS as well. And the C is the qubit chord version 2. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the dry on each one and then let you listen to the wet. Maybe fiddle around with a little bit of the parameters just to give you an idea of what they sound like. telHarmonic. Now I'm going to go wet. Next up, Braids in the wavetable chord mode. Go wet. Next up, we have Magneto. Now what I'm doing for the Magneto is I am taking the root out from the chord, which sounds like this, and going directly in the Magneto without any effects. Now the magic with Magneto comes or when you flip this little switch to shift, and then the beautiful symphony starts. Going to wet. Really gorgeous sounding. Okay, next up is Plaits. Oh, next up is Ensemble. Now going wet. Next up is Plaits. Going wet. Next up, we have rings. Now, rings is not what you would think to be an oscillator that would give you a nice chord sound, but in the alternate string mode, which is the flashing yellow, it can come up with some pretty wild chord sounds. Starts out kind of tame, and then when you turn up the brightness, the dampening, you can get everything up to a distorted guitar sound. It's wonderful. And wet. Next up, we have the Swan. Going wet. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, we have the Cubid Chord, the only oscillator in my system that is really dedicated to making chords. And wet. So which is best for you? Well, I'll let you decide. Each of these oscillators has unique characteristics with that oscillator. For example, Magneto obviously has a lot of different controls. It's a delay, but it can add a lot of different effects, including wow and flutter to make it sound like a lo-fi taped sound. Modules like Braids and Plaits obviously have a lot of parameters that you can adjust to manipulate the sound a little bit. You can reduce the bit rate on Braids. You can do a whole bunch of things with each of these modules. And Swan, well, Swan is just in a universe on itself. There's so much you can do with Swan. It's really wonderful. I'm just trying to get into Ensemble. It seems like it's a very, very powerful module. Producing chords is obviously what it's just knockout best at. But each of these modules can do a pretty decent type of chord, depending upon what you want. Now, the key to making chords in an ambient piece is obviously movement. You still want movement in a chord, even though it's a static sound in the background. You still want a little bit of movement. So gentle oscillation is definitely, or gentle modulation is definitely something that is needed. We have things like Divke's aux. We have the Batumi. We have things like even a ornament and crime will do you very well. Or even just a stepped random CV going through a VCA and an envelope will really do a lot for making movement inside your chord, just to keep it from sounding a little bit too stale if it's carrying on through the whole piece. But anyway, obviously don't forget the FX that you put at the end of the chord is going to be really key to getting the ambience that you want, particular type of ambience. The FX Aid from Happy Nerding is probably my favorite FX module right now in this rack. It's just hard to go wrong with it. There's so many parameters. There's so many different algorithms you can put in it to come up with any type of ambient sound that you're looking for. If you can find one, they're kind of hard to find. I know Analog Haven stocks them occasionally, but if you can find one, absolutely grab it up. The essential module for an ambient system, in my opinion. Anyway, that's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and click on the little bell to get future updates. Thanks for listening.